Okay, so if you don't know, my book's name is Metallic, and it is based off of my my D&D campaign. I told you a little bit about that D&D campaign yesterday when I was doing a D&D prep, but this is way further back at the very beginning of the campaign, and it's very loosely based off of the campaign because when I first started, there wasn't really a whole lot of plot going on, and obviously the characters weren't super fleshed out. So, like, the book is just kind of, like, loosely based on it, and not, like, it's way more fleshed out, way more is going on. But anyways, we're going to... Let's go to my DMing scene. That'll serve. Okay. Then let's scooch my little pumpkin head out a little bit. Yeah, that's good. Nope, wrong one. Okay, so I should probably give myself a goal for today as far as writing goes. I should figure out what I'm going to do, because obviously I haven't read over it in a long time, so I should probably just read through it and just kind of like reacquaint myself with it. So I'm just going to read it out to you guys, and then we're just going to and then maybe make a few edits along the way. So, all right. Metallic, Blood and Iron, Chapter 1, Eat Your Greens. Section 1, The Ranger. The Ranger knelt in the dirt and foliage, studying it. He wore a dirty green cloak over leather armor. His green eyes peered behind shaggy white hair. He worked his jaw covered in white scruff back and forth as he analyzed his surroundings. To anyone else, it was just the ground, but to him, it was like a book about everything going on in these woods. Deer tracks here, wolf droppings there, an old badger burrow. These plants hadn't had any rain in some time. Is that, can we hurry this along, Olaf? I've got a destiny to get to, you know. The paladin interrupted, standing a short distance back. This man wore full plate mail suit of armor, probably handed down from his great-great-grand whatever, and cost a small fortune. His arms were crossed impatiently despite being decked in iron gauntlets. Olaf, the ranger, scowled back at him. The other man insisted on wearing the most impractical armor to go ranging in. It was heavy, loud, and shiny. He was too proud of his godly symbols to even bother wearing a cloak over it, at least. They were gold, or at least appeared to be, which matched his eyes. He stood out in the trees like a beacon of self-righteousness. Shit, I scrolled at the wrong moment. He stood out in the trees like a beacon of self-righteousness that would surely attract a bear any minute now. His hair was just as white as Olaf's, but it was sleek and it was shined like platinum, while his own was wild and tangled like fur. Yeah, I'm working on it. Just don't disturb this part of the trail, please. Olaf waved him off dismissively and turned back to the trail, where a fresh stream of piss was splashing all over it. The piss's owner was a Tyrannosaurus Rex. A baby one, if you could call him that. He was covered in copper-colored feathers and was as tall as Olaf was. He was standing directly in the middle of his trail, pissing all over it. Meanwhile, the piss's owner's owner was lounging on the beast's back, the bird beast's back, head resting on his hand. This is a weird sentence. The piss's owner's owner was lounging on the bird beast's back. The bird beast's back. Yeah, no. This phrase right here. On the overgrown bird. I'm gonna go with that. Was lounging on the overgrown bird, gazing at the clouds. He had long, uncut black hair and brown eyes, watching the clouds roll by. The little shit was a gnome that they had picked up along the way in their little expedition. He just rolled on up to them one day and introduced himself as a druid, and the dino was his companion. They made him uneasy. Olaf kept expecting the toothy bird creature to lunge at one of them at any given moment, but it never did. Olaf didn't want them to join, but the paladin overruled him. He was the one paying for this stupid trip, so Olaf didn't really get a say. Hey, Olaf yelled at them, your bird's pissing on my trail. The T-Rex floofed its neck feathers at this and squawked at the ranger indignantly. The gnome noticed Olaf for the first time and waved at him apologetically. Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't know you were tracking through here. Just go around us. You realize that he is leaving a scent trail everywhere we go, right? Olaf sneered at the carefree man-child thing. What if we're followed by predators? The gnome chuckled. Nothing would be stupid enough to hunt a T-Rex. Yeah, except a bigger, older T-Rex. The gnome just shrugged as his orange dinosaur wandered off. Olaf ran a hand down his face and turned back to Mr. Shiny Plate Mail. You know, it would really help if I knew what we should be looking for in the first place. The paladin adjusted his armor uncomfortably. Well, evil, of course. You know it. You'll know it when you see it. Well, it would be nice if evil had a scent or maybe some footprints. He turned back to the forest floor. If he focused now, he might find a trail before the last member of the party. Stupid trees, rah! A big stacked orc barbarian in nothing but a loincloth chopped through the shrubbery behind them. Visibly foaming at the mouth, he slashed and chopped at the trees, leaving Sorry. I'm gonna take a sip of coffee real quick. Stupid trees, rah! A big stacked orc barbarian in nothing but a loincloth chopped through the shrubbery behind them. Visibly foaming at the mouth, he slashed and chopped at the trees and leaves about him with his great orcish twin axe. His skin was patches of white and gray. He had two small tusks jutting up from his thick square jaw. His black hair was in a thick warrior braid down his back. He was having another one of his fits again. Olaf was sure he had the madness. Hey, why you stop walking? He seemed to have forgotten his feudal war against the trees now. Because none of you can shut up and let me work. Olaf spat back at them all. Startled by Olaf's outburst, the barbarian's pet jaguar yelled at him from one of the trees up above. Olaf just gave it the stink eye and turned back around to find the trail again. All for the dragons. All for the dragons. Olaf told himself. Over a week ago, he had been in a small town named Shriekbush when the paladin came riding in on his sleek gray horse promising gold dragons to anyone who could help him find the evil lurking in these woods. Now, Olaf didn't particularly need money. He doesn't need any food or shelter since he can get both of those things out here easily enough. He surely wasn't paying any taxes, but what he can't get in the woods was beer and a brothel. Unfortunately, they don't trade for squirrel pelts. He tried. Olaf took a deep breath and looked back at all the little clues scattered about the small clearing. He spotted a suspicious pile of dung under the shrub over there. He spotted a suspicious pile of dung under a shrub a short distance away. He edged around the puddle and looked a little closer. It's tinged a little green, and is one big pile instead of little pellets. Definitely carnivorous, but with poor digestion. Could be sick. Turn this down just a little bit more. Could be sick. Olaf? Not now, gods damn it. He found a track near the dung pile. It was a footprint, actually, a humanoid, but smaller, with only 4 toes. It had claws, or at least some gnarly long toenails. This could only be one thing. Olaf, what? Olaf finally looked up to find the others staring out in different directions, weapons drawn. In the shrubs and the trees were lots of little green men. Their eyes had little pinpoints of reflected green light peering at them from the shady gaps in the leaves. Goblins. Is this centered? There we go. Section 2, the Paladin. Terra and Enro's skull stood back to back with his recently found traveling companions, log sword drawn and shield held high to protect against anticipated arrows. Were these goblins the great evil he was sent out to vanquish? And Enro muttered a quick prayer, "Heaven give me the eyes of the Archons so that I may peer into these wretched souls." Instead, instantly, his vision went black and white, except for the creatures around him. With these eyes, he could see into the very souls of every sapient being. His companions were different colors. Olaf was brown, like the earth. His heart contained troubling amounts of hedonism, but he had not detected evil within him. The druid was orange as a sunset. His heart was light and full of love for nature. The barbarian soul had unusually shifting colors from time to time, never staying with one for too long. His heart was ill somehow, but not evil. The goblins around him were all a sickly green, like a poisonous fog. Their hearts were black with malice, hate, and twisted from short lives of violent and unforgivable deeds. Evil they were, but great they were not. Surely this was not his destiny, but merely a stepping stone on the path to it. The goblins sized up the 4 humanoids as they did the same, and one of them sitting in the tree tittered, "Your food or your life." The other goblins cackled as though this was the funniest thing they had ever heard. It sounded like high-pitched barking, like foxes or hyenas. Before anyone realized, it had been knocked. An arrow flew from Olaf's longbow, hitting the one that had spoken up, square between his beady black eyes. The little green man fell from the tree branch to the floor below in a dead heap. The others looked down at his body with slack jaws, stunned. Now, so they immediately go into battle at this point, but I think I want to have a short moment of like negotiation. This was a long time ago, but like I kind of like reached out to other writers about this, and the consensus is that like having a race of like pure evil creatures is just kind of outdated and probably a little bit racist. So I need to kind of do a little bit more work to make the goblins a little bit more human-ish. Like obviously not like completely human. They're still monsters, right? But like there needs to be some more, I don't know. We'll figure it out. Like there needs to be some kind of like justification for their evilness instead of just they're born that way. Which was kind of like how I was just originally describing the goblins. I was like, they're just monsters and they just need to be exterminated, and that's that. But that's A, problematic, and B, not very interesting when you really think about it. Like it makes for great action sequences, and you know, there are pros to it, but like I feel like we need to do a little bit more with these goblins than just have them show up and then get exterminated, and then that's the end of that. So what I think I want to do is I want to write just a very short, like maybe 1 or 2 paragraphs here where the goblins are kind of like negotiating, because like obviously like, you know, usually like they come out and the people that they harass are like, you know, defenseless, basically just like villagers, people who like, you know, aren't trained. But like obviously Olaf has just shown like, you know, some strength, and he just immediately eliminated one of those goblins. So the rest of the goblins are probably like kind of like maybe a little bit more apprehensive about going through with this. So like I think maybe what I should do is, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to try to write some more human, like try to humanize these goblins a little bit, because I'm also writing this from the paladin's perspective, Anenra. And Anenra definitely would not think that they are people, at least not at first. That definitely will have to change later as like his character grows a little bit more and he gets more experience out in the real world. But at this point, like this is the first time he's ever encountered something like this. And you know, he does have this the detect evil ability, so like he knows that they are evil. He doesn't know why they're evil. So he's just like, oh, like they're just monsters, they need to die. But I want to show a little bit more about the goblins. And they're obviously just here. They're for food. They're just trying to survive. So, but like at this point, like one of them just died. And they need to like kind of like analyze the situation. And because like when you're a predator and like you have to fight for your food, like you kind of have to, like there's a risk that comes with that. Because if you get injured, then that really hinders your ability to get more food. So if more of them die, that's gonna impact them in the future. And they're good. And even though the goblins are probably not that smart, they definitely understand that. They know that, like, you know, lots of them dying for no reason is definitely not going to be beneficial to them. So let's write them. Okay. I'm gonna have, obviously whenever I start writing, I'm gonna have to be a little bit quiet because I have to think about the words that I'm putting on the page. So please forgive if I'm just a little bit quiet and not interacting with the viewers. He wouldn't say confer. He would say something like, he'd say like he'd be suspicious of them, right? So that like they're muttering to themselves. The goblins seem to be, what is that word? I need to look up a word. Shit, I can't even think of a word to cinnamon with a word. Basically like plotting. Yeah. Synonym of plotting. Like what's... Scheming. Yeah, there we go. Conniving. Yeah, let me check the definition of conniving real quick. Someone who secretly plots schemes or tricks. Is it like a verb? Or is it just an adjective? Okay, we'll go with scheming. Hi. Welcome to the chat. And thanks for the follow. I took writing for granted. I only realized how much I loved writing when I had to live, how much I hate doing anything else. So don't become bigger than the craft like me, just venting. But goblins are a part of an ecosystem. That's how I always fit stuff like that. What is their place? Function defines form and aesthetics. That's a great point. What is a goblin's place in the ecosystem? I would say I definitely treat them like an invasive species, because that's always how they've been kind of described to me, is like, especially like I saw Goblin Hunter, and that was definitely exactly how they were described, where they just kind of reproduce rampantly and just destroy the ecosystems around them. And that was kind of how I was originally treating them. But since I kind of want to shift away from the Goblin Hunter thing, I'm probably gonna have to think of another way. Invasive salmon, yeah. And you know, maybe I could stick with that, but like I might have to think about that a little bit more. But yeah, thanks for you know, chatting with me. Like I haven't really had anyone chatting a whole lot recently, but I only barely started, so. Anyways, I need to focus on writing for a little bit, and then I will, I'll take a break and chat with you guys here in a second. Invasive species means they do have a proper place somewhere. That's a great point, actually. I wonder what the proper place for a goblin would be. Invasive against other terrain dwellers reside in a perpetual cave complex. Against open terrain dwellers, yeah, okay, yeah. So they're more like underdark creatures, like they fit in the caves, but not on the surface. Species wreak havoc where they don't belong on a macro scale, and the best of worlds where it should not be a meta in nature. I think that's where the human notion of balance comes from. That's why people are a problem. We are the meta wherever we go. That's very true, actually. So yeah, definitely very like cave dwelling by nature, like and one thing about the setting is that like the summers have like total sunlight and the winters have like total darkness, at least on like the upper half of the planet. So like creatures that typically live underground or like don't like the sunlight very much will come out during the winter. And at this point where I'm starting the book, it's the spring. So like there's a lot of these monsters that are still kind of lingering after the winter has ended. And it's kind of so that's why they kind of like run into like these goblins and they run into other creatures along the way. Is that they're kind of like they haven't like receded back to their natural habitat. They're just still causing a little bit of chaos up on the surface. So yeah. So what is my next step? Let me just read what I wrote. Before anyone realized it had been knocked, an arrow flew from Olaf's longbow, hitting the one that had spoken up square between his beady black eyes. Excuse me. The little green man fell from his tree branch to the floor below in a dead heap. The chittering hyena-like barking stopped immediately as all the green pinpoints shifted to their companion on the forest floor. And then tensed and looked all about for a retaliatory strike that was sure to come. It didn't. The goblins seemed to be scheming with each other about the sudden change in their situation. Psst, Anenra. The druid was similarly tense for battle, his empty hands raised, ready to cast a spell at a moment's notice. What do we do? Anenra gestured with a sword hand for his companions to wait. He then addressed the whispering cowards in the trees. You there, goblins, surrender yourselves peacefully to the... Suddenly, a green blur was pushed from the trees to the ground and landed with a little whelp of pain. How about a yelp? Is that correct? With a little yelp of pain. The little thing stood up and looked up at the party that towered over them with large, terrified eyes. This one was just a runt and unarmed. It spoke up, its voice trembling slightly. The others want me to tell you to give us your food and we'll leave you be. And then there was... Okay, I'm just going to write it for a little bit longer. Hmm. Hello, Charlie. No, don't walk on my computer. What did you even press? Yeah. Sorry, my cat likes to hang out with me on my desk normally. But since I've started streaming it, he doesn't understand that I kind of need him to not be walking all up on my computer. Okay, I'm gonna write a little bit more. How does he say goblins? Gobos? My barbarian kind of like talks really, really dumb. Kitty Cat's on a shiny metal band, and everyone was cranky for an Olaf and a little band with a big bird Neo a couple suns ago. He's got a low intelligence score, let's just say that. Okay. Where am I? Is that how you say knocked? Is it knock like knocking on a door? No, it's different. He wouldn't be aiming at the runt because the runt is kind of not as much of a threat. Oh, Charlie. My cat's being needy. It's distracting me. Okay, maybe I can make a little room for you. I gotta move my microphone. Okay, come here. Come here, come here. My thinking face is squinty. Well, yeah, that's partially because I wear glasses and VTube Studio is it doesn't like my glasses. It doesn't really detect my eyes very well. If I don't wear glasses, it kind of looks more like this, like, and I just like I can use my eyes correctly. But yeah, I kind of need my glasses to see, like, I'm nearsighted, but like I did it yesterday where I didn't have my glasses on and I just like increased the size of my screen so that I could see better. So I might do that, but it did hurt my eyes after a little while. Species wreak havoc where they don't belong on a micro scale. Goblin migration cycle. Goblins travel only during the darkness. Pretty cool. I get really into world building to where it derails actually telling a story. Yeah, I've definitely had that issue before. That's definitely a very common thing, especially with fantasy writers. Nocturnal burrowing animals have specific reasons to leave their safe space, like ants. There's this species of ant that grows flesh-eating fungi. I think I saw that in a Planet Earth special. It's the leafcutter ant. It's not flesh-eating fungi, but they do farm it. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that's sick. Yeah, okay. Well, I could kind of work with that idea. Like something drove these goblins out of the underground and onto the surface. I do have a couple of ideas for what that could be. I do deal with the drow later on, but obviously because of copyright reasons, they're not going to be drow. They're going to be like dark elves. I'm going to have to, you know, change it up a little bit, make it look like I didn't, you know, copy D&D's homework. I will be dealing with the drow later. That's going to be like book 2, though, I think. Like, I don't think we're going to get to them in this book. That's like the main antagonist also from the Underdark, but there is also a Barghest later. That's also going to be book 2. And if you don't know D&D Barghest, they're kind of like goblins if goblins were like demons, and they come from other planes so that they can come to the material plane to like eat people and then like sort of transform. After they've eaten a certain number of people, they transform into a stronger version of themselves, and then they just go right back to whatever hell they crawled out of. But this particular group of goblins is not directly associated with the Barghest, but you know, maybe. I think this is a little bit too big. Let's take off my glasses and see if I can still read. It's blurry, but I can read. Okay, let's just read what I wrote. Suddenly a green blur was pushed from the trees to the ground and landed with a little yelp of pain. The little thing stood up and looked up at the party that towered above it with large, terrified eyes. This one was just a runt and unarmed. It spoke up, its voice trembling slightly. The others want me to tell you to give us your food, and we'll leave you be. Anenra was surprised. The religious texts did not speak of goblins often, but when they did, they were spoken of as incapable of such a thing as peace or even negotiation. Anenra's Archon eyes peered into this little runt's soul as he considered its words. Its heart was not black, but merely harbored the seeds of evil. Anenra supposed it simply wasn't old enough to have committed the same deeds as its monstrous family members. And given more time, would surely succumb to the corruption. If I fed you, then you and your kind would continue to thrive and go on to abuse someone else, someone more defenseless than us. The goblins of the leaves growled at this statement, and the little one cowered as if anticipating punishment, shielding its large floppy ears with its twig-thin arms. Anandra looked at his companions. What say you? The barbarian beat his massive chest with his offhand. Gobbo's weak. Easy fight. Olaf had an arrow knocked and was scanning the branches for the first target to present itself. Less goblins means more deer. The druid nodded in agreement. They're invasive to this forest. We should, at the very least, push them back to the underground where they belong. Okay, my cat's making it hard for me to reach the keys, but I'm going to do a little bit more writing. Okay, I'm gonna read what I wrote and just keep reading. Enor looked at his companions. What say you? The barbarian beat his massive chest with the offhand. Gobbo's weak. Easy fight. Olaf had an arrow knocked and was scanning the branches for the first target to present itself. I'm gonna zoom in a little bit more. Olaf had an arrow knocked and was scanning the branches for the first target to present itself. Less goblins means more deer. The druid nodded in agreement. They're invasive to this forest. We should, at the very least, push them back underground where they belong. It was unanimous. The goblins needed to go. I decline your offer. Flee or face the wrath of heaven. The little runt goblin squeaked in fear and fled immediately, kicking up loose dirt behind its bare feet as it scurried away. Its companions were not so eager to flee, it seemed. Many of them dropped out of the branches with high-pitched war cries, while crude arrows began to fly at them from all directions. Excuse me. Enor pointed his sword roared valiantly, "Never surrender! Charge!" He sprinted towards a small group of goblins, screaming like madmen. Truth be told, Enenra hadn't been in a real fight before. Of course, he had sparred and been in duels, but that was between people. Nobody ever died in those fights, just injured. These were monsters. If Enenra lost, they would surely kill him, or worse. Likewise, if Enenra won, he would execute the survivors. The law demanded it. One of the three greens was shocked by the sudden war cry. It hesitated just a moment too long to avoid the point of Enenra's sword, impaling him right through his torso. He looked down at the sword in disbelief before it was pulled back out, ending his life abruptly. It was Enenra's first kill. He had thought he would be afraid of this, but he was excited. He had slain the wicked, and he was eager to slay some more. The two others beside him recovered from their shock to raise shoddy rusted weapons, no doubt pilfered from their previous victims. Rah! They scrunched up their ugly faces and bared sharp teeth as they went for the back of Enenra's knees. He blocked with both shield and sword, then returned an uppercut slashed across the right one's face. He brought the blade back down in an arc, cleaving the left one's skull in two. The right one fell back, clutching at the space where his stubby nose had been. Enenra pulled his sword free of the left one's skull and brought it down into the right one's chest. The paladin pulled his blade free and looked back to see the others fighting as well. The barbarian twirled his orcish twin war axe. Is war axe one word? No, it's two words. The barbarian twirled his orcish twin war axe surprisingly gracefully for his large size, landing back-to-back hits that sent limbs flying this way and that. He had to get the barbarian to teach him how to use one of those someday. The barbarian's jaguar pounced on an unsuspecting goblin from the trees above and immediately tore open its neck. The druid summoned vines that grew around a half a dozen goblins' ankles, keeping them rooted to the ground as he rode his dinosaur straight into them, letting it chomping down. I can't speak. Give me 1 second. Let me go get my water bottle. Mouth is dry. Goodbye, Charlie. I'm sorry I bothered you. I know. Lay down. Lay down. Yeah, there you go. The pumpkin good? Yeah, it looks good. Okay. The druid summoned vines that grew around a half a dozen goblins' ankles, keeping them rooted to the ground as he rode his dinosaur straight into them, letting it chomp down on their helpless bodies. It was rather grisly to watch, actually. The ranger had taken cover and was engaged in a ranged battle against the goblins positioned in sniper perches. The trees and grass around him sprouted numerous crooked arrows as he picked the poor archers off one at a time. All in all, the battle was nearly won almost as soon as it had started, but Enenra spotted a small pack of the greens flanking towards Olaf. He immediately cut them off, charging them shield first. He knocked one flat on its ass, then blocked a sloppy attack from the goblin wielding a rusted morning star too large for its frame. Enenra returned the attack by driving his sword tip through the little creature's forehead. The other three goblins, including the one Enenra had knocked down, pounced on top of Enenra, knocking him to his back, frantically trying to pierce through the gleaming armor. Enenra let go of the sword, still stuck in the skull of the now dead goblin, and with his gauntlet clenched, swiped away his attackers. He rolled to his knees and quickly grabbed one by the ankle, pulled it closer, and brought the point of his kite shield down onto its throat. The other two found their footing again and tried to stab at the paladin's exposed face, but Enenra once again shield bashed them back, then retrieved his sword in time to decapitate them both in a single swing. Enenra panted and got to his feet, once again taking stock of the battle. Enenra spotted a relatively large goblin in mismatched armor with a big rusty cleaver, who seemed to have hung back from the first attack. Enenra knew this must be the chief. Goblins had no respect for anyone or anything else. How would he know that? He's never met the goblins. He would say something like, the ancient texts. Enenra's texts say that the goblins had no respect for anyone or anything else except for those that were bigger and meaner than them. He pointed his sword at the chief, declared loudly for all to hear, "In the name of the heavens, I, Enenra of Skull, shall smite thee." Golden lightning struck the sword suddenly with a loud crack, leaving it glowing with holy energy. The chief's eyes widened and said, "Oh, fuck that," and fled. The Enenra's pauldrons drooped and the glow of the hollowed vengeance faded from his sword. He had been wanting to smite something for years. The pursuer. "Olaf, go after their chief." Olaf had just put down the last archer down and looked the way Enenra pointed. "Yes, my liege." He didn't bother to bow sarcastically this time and ran after the war chief. If that little green bastard got away now, Enenra would surely want to track him down for another week or so, and personally, Olaf was sick of leading him around the Hooded Woods. Actually, I just changed it. It's the Red Hood Woods. Was sick of leading him around the Red Hood Woods. The closest thing that, actually, I should probably, like, search F. Wooded. No? Is there no more? Okay. The pursuer. The closest thing they had found to great evil until now was a particularly ornery badger. Bow in hand, Olaf pumped his legs hard, straining with the lack of friction on the loose earth beneath him. He darted around trees and leapt down after a few short drops. He quickly spotted the little pudgy fucker wheezing ahead of him, just a couple dozen yards or so away. Sorry, phone vibrated. He quickly spotted the little pudgy fucker wheezing ahead of him, just a couple dozen yards or so away. The little cretin heard him coming and caught his second wind, rushing past the brush out of sight. He had him now. Olaf ducked his head down and burst through the bushes and ran right into his spear at full speed. He stopped sliding about halfway down the sharpened stick, which had been sticking out of the ground at a sharp angle. It was now run clean through Olaf's middle. He looked about and saw similar sharpened sticks pointing in the same direction. It had been a trap. He returned his gaze back down. "Would you look at that? I've been impaled." The last thing he saw was sharp yellow goblin teeth grinning down at him before he blacked out. Chapter 2, Allegory of the Goblin Cave. Let me check, see if... Writers might be the worst people to talk about writing because for the most part, I have no idea where it comes from and any answer that I come up with is unhelpful. Asking such involved questions is counterproductive to writing. I speak in broad philosophical statements. It makes it hard to make it sound like I am listening. Yeah, no, that's fine. The 2 hyphen does look odd in Twin War X, right? People do make assumptions. Charlie, get your claws. My cat is very needy and he likes to dig his claws into me when we're cuddling sometimes. And he doesn't understand that I'm talking to other people. He thinks I'm talking to him, so he's like responding to me talking. Yeah, it's a little bit annoying, but he's adorable. Okay. Let me go back. I'm gonna... win. I don't know. I feel like the spaces are also weird. Orcish Twin War Axe. Yeah, I'll just leave it with the spaces. Okay. Allegory of the Goblin Cave. The Druid. Okay. Charlie, I'm gonna have to kick you off. You're being too disruptive. Alright. Alright, bud. Go cuddle your mama. Okay. Chapter 2, Allegory of the Goblin Cave. The Druid. Mio, the gnomish druid, rode bareback on his baby T-Rex named Rex. Nobody ever said Mio was creative, but he loved his big murder bird all the same. That's it, buddy. Eat your greens so you'll grow up big and strong. Rex had his entire maw buried in the goblin's insides, gorging himself to his heart's delight. Mio patted his neck and looked around at the carnage they had created together. The barbarian was a few yards away trying to find a weapon that wasn't literal garbage. Unfortunately, goblins didn't seem to put much stock into general weapon maintenance, or hygiene, or a lot of things, really. And Enra seemed to be sentencing the survivors to death for their crimes against humanity and executing them. He turned back the other way, shifting his position on the dinosaur, looking all around. Hey, where's Olaf? He turned back to Enra, who pulled his sword from the particularly twitchy goblin. He went after their chief, and Enra gestured vaguely in the direction he went. Well, shouldn't he be back by now? Mio gave him a critical look as if to say, bruh. You don't think he's... There was a pregnant pause. The barbarian finally gave up on looking for a decent weapon and simply decapitated one of the little green men, and stuffed the head in a sack as a grisly trophy. Olaf is tough. No gobbo could kill him. Let's go. He stood to his full height, shouldered his huge and bloody weapon, and led the way with his jaguar by his side. Wrong way, they went through here. And Enra pointed down the correct direction and led them through it. Mio spurred Rex into a dino equivalent of a trot, and began looking for footprints. Luckily, Olaf was running very hard, and the earth here was loose. They were easy to make out, even amidst dozens of smaller footprints going the opposite way. It did not take very long before they cut down the brush, leading to the dozen or so spear traps sticking out of the ground. Olaf's prints led right to a hole where another spear must have been set, along with patches of earth near it stained with blood. That can't be good, Mio observed. I hadn't known droids to be so astute. Now, where did they go? And Enra's gauntlets were clenched in anger. Who cares? He's probably dead already. Mio had only joined this group because he thought it might be fun to be on a quest to vanquish evil, but his experience with Olaf thus far hadn't been very pleasant. And Enra turned towards the smaller man with a fierce expression. I do not leave my men behind. Mio found Enra's loyalty respectable, but entirely one-sided. Well, that's noble and all, but would he do the same for you? Mio asked, honestly curious to hear Enra's answer. Of the four of them, Mio found Olaf to be the least charitable. He was standoffish and cared neither for the animals nor the people around him. To Olaf, they were all a means to an end, which only seemed to involve money, women, and alcohol. That doesn't matter. I'm going to get him alive or dead. Now, lead me to him. The paladin crossed his greaves, clearly not budging on the issue. Mio wasn't surprised by this statement, but still didn't see the point. It's not like Olaf's body was going to be useful or necessary to them. This rescue mission was likely to only end in more death. Their death. Olaf should not have chased the chief like this in the first place. He clearly had not dealt with goblins before. These cowardly tactics were all too common. Hey, you guys! They both looked up from their discussion to see the barbarian waving at them frantically from the far side of the field. Goblin cave here, you think Olaf's in it? Now the matter was out of Mio's hands. And Enra was going in there whether Mio helped or not. Yes, but please be quiet, we don't want to alert the goblins, Mio called back. What? The barbarian was cupping his hands around his mouth to be even louder. Please be quiet or the goblins will hear you. Oh, okay. We're not done with this conversation, but we'll pick it up later. And Enra began marching across the field, slicing any spears in his path without breaking stride. Mio hesitated. He could just leave. He didn't know them. Not really. He didn't owe them anything. There was no reason to risk his life like this. Mio looked back the way that they came, away from the cave. God damn it, come on, Rex. He steered the dino towards the cave anyway. Okay, this is highlighted because this is where I left off last time I was doing a read-through, which was forever ago. Section 2, The Barbarian. Hi, I'm Dave, spelled D-A-V. Me and my kitty cat Zen met the shiny metal man Enra, his cranky friend Olaf, and the little man with the big bird Mio a couple suns ago, when us was looking for a new tribe. Old tribe didn't like Dave and told him to go away. So me and Zed was walking until us met the other guys. Dave was explaining to the poor goblin that he had caught and was now sitting on top of. It heard Dave yelling earlier and foolishly came to investigate instead of going in and warning the others. Now it was wheezing while the weight of Dave's bulk was crushing its ribcage slowly. I I guess I should get rid of that. So I have these like Easter eggs in Dave's sections because he's kind of got a voice in his head that tells him fucked up shit. But obviously if there's like an extra line here, it's easy to spot. So I'm going to get rid of that one. So me is a smart. I seen to Nenra using magics to fix ouchies. So me thinks maybe if he fixes ouchies, he can fix my head ouchies. Because sometimes my head hurt really bad and I get really angry. Really, really angry. Dave's eyes bugged out as he punched the palm of his other hand for emphasis. The goblin was struggling so hard to breathe he couldn't scream in terror. So I figured, if I join Middleman's tribe, maybe he fix my head someday. So me and Zen say, hey, can us be in your tribe and we be friends? And he looked really hard at me for a bit and says, yeah. So now we's friends and get to kill stuff together. But Middleman and Enra says, me can only kills evil stuff. I don't really know what stuffs is evil or not, so Middleman's tells me not to kill things sometimes. But I guess goblins is okay to kill. Oh, I think my friends are coming, so I'm gonna kill you now, okay? The goblin shook his head no vigorously as Dave reached down and snapped the little thing's neck like a chicken. Dave, who are you talking to? And Enra said as he walked towards him by the entrance of the cave, with Mio just behind. Dave stood quickly and tried to look innocent. Just in. He gestured to the jaguar lounging belly up in the sun. What were you doing with that goblin? And Enra gestured toward the limp body on the ground with the tip of his sword. Dave looked down at it like he had never seen it before. Oh, I found him like that. He shrugged nonchalantly. Uh-huh. Well, whatever the nine hells you're doing, stop it. We need to go in there and find Olaf. And Enra dropped to one knee and switched out his shield for a torch from his pack. After a moment with the tinderbox, he got it lit, said onward, and led the way into the cave. Dave picked up his twin axe and followed. Zan noticed the departure and quickly rolled over and trotted behind Dave loyally. Dave wasn't sure why humans carried fire in the dark. It hurt his eyes to look at, so he held his free hand up to block it and followed the back of Anenra's greaves. Say Rex, guard the cave, Mio said, dismounting at the cave's entrance. The big copper-feathered beast trilled cutely and squatted down like a big chicken. It reached into its big head over to the goblin body and dragged it closer for a snack. The cave smelled awful, not that Dave minded it that much. Goblin stink was nothing like orc stink, even if the air was trapped in a cave. They ventured downward, having to crawl down a hole or two in places, but Mio was sure the goblins took Olaf through here. Excuse me. There were some trails of blood that suggested as much. All the while they tried to stay quiet and cautious, expecting a rush of small creatures with blades in hand rushing around every corner. Each time they rounded one, there was nothing there. Just more drops of blood and goblin footprints. We have to be close now, Anenra whispered hopefully, wiping his sweat from his face with a kerchief. Dave watched Anenra's feet as they continued and noticed the rock in front of him was a patch of loose rubble. Stop! Dave's instincts kicked in, but not before Anenra stepped directly in the rubble, which quickly gave way. Dave reached out with his free hand and grabbed Anenra's back plate. Anenra stopped suddenly, dropping his torch into the deep pit with more spears at the bottom. He was leaning precariously out over it before Dave pulled him back onto the solid stone. I lost my torch. Anenra could see it still lit at the bottom of the pit, but everything else was cast in shadow now. Dave, can you see a way around this pit? Anenra knew orcs were nocturnal and could probably see in the dark. Really? Mio whisper exclaimed. You want us to keep going? Mio grabbed Anenra and pulled him around to face him, despite the man being twice his size. We can't fucking see, but you know who can? Goblins. All fucking goblins can. Then cast a light spell. I've seen you do it, Anenra whisper yelled, exasperated. I didn't prepare that spell today because I wasn't planning to be in a fucking goblin cave. You need to have some faith. Faith? You want to talk about faith? Nature doesn't care what you believe. Ba-boom. 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 War drums. It wasn't very loud from where they stood, but they could hear them clearly. The three of them, and even the jaguar, froze deadly still. Their faces were underlit by the dying torch from beneath... dying torch... in the spear pit. Frozen in... No. Frozen in apprehension. Only after a full minute did Anenra dare to move. He turned back to the others. I'm getting him back. Are you both in or out? Mio hesitated. The drums beat 3 times in slow rhythmic succession. Dave responded, "Me and Olaf not dead," and beat his chest in time to the drums. Dave had no real reason to believe this. He just did. Mio looked at them both, and they looked back at him expectantly. "We're insane. We're all insane. We're gonna die down here because we're crazy." Adenra took that to mean he was in and turned back to Dave. "Lead the way." Druids love the fluids. They represent the energy of a place. It's all abstract concepts. I want to see the Druid of Detroit. It used to be one of the economic hearts of America. Most cars in America were built there at one point. Druids of Detroit turned into a fucked up car. Transformers are druids. I agree. Transformers are druids. Hi, hello Phoenix Flame. How's it going? All right. For anybody that's joined recently, we are reading over my half-finished novel and making edits along the way. It's called Metallic, and it's based on my my homebrew campaign. Part 3, The Oblation. Ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. Olaf groaned. He attempted to roll over and immediately regretted it. His abdomen hurt so badly he couldn't move. He clutched at the pain and found a tree branch sticking out. He opened his eyes and saw the crude spear he had run himself into was still there. His eyes went wide and he remembered what happened. But he wasn't in the field anymore. He was somewhere dim. There was a fire behind him, but he couldn't look back. He was on a raised semi-flat rock somewhere underground. Drums were beating slowly and loudly. It echoed off the cavern walls, and Olaf could make out the firelight behind him reflected from the many green goblin eyes in the shadows. There had to be dozens of them, all in front of him, waiting for something. Olaf coughed some blood and spoke in the goblin tongue. "Wait." His voice was weak and couldn't be heard over the drums. We can make a deal." Olaf tried to reason with them, but they weren't listening. Ba-boom, 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 ba-boom. The drums stopped. The many goblins' eyes shifted over Olaf. He painfully lifted his upper torso up on an elbow so that he could turn his head to look behind him. Standing over him in red ceremonial war paint and a filthy rag of a loincloth was the goblin chief. He was quite fat for a goblin. Most of the goblins were starving, but his gut almost nearly hung over his cloth pendulously. In the rough goblin tongue, he addressed the entire group. "Clan Mar, I brought a human!" The goblins erupted into a raucous cheer. Olaf was suddenly very afraid. You'd think waking up with a spear in your stomach would have elicited more fear than this, but apparently not. The chief sauntered around Olaf and was handed one of Olaf's daggers. "Today we kill it! For the battle lord!" He posed with the dagger pointed straight in the air as Clanmar cheered once more. The crowd seemed to stir and move amongst each other with a fervor Olaf found disturbing. He was glad it was too dark to tell what they were doing, but he could make a good guess based on the noises. He walked across the top of the crude altar towards Olaf's head, wielding the dagger high above him. Olaf weakly tried to reason with him again. "Wait, please, I can get you anything." The chief ignored his pleas and knelt by Olaf's head, raising the dagger all the way up in the air. Then the dagger began to glow orange. The chief stopped and looked up at it confused. Then his hand began to sizzle as the white-hot dagger cooked his hand. The chief of Clan Mar dropped the dagger aside and clutched his smoking hand. At the same time, there was a commotion at the back of the gathering. Olaf looked and he could barely make out. "Mio!" He had his hand reached out to the dagger, but immediately stopped concentrating on that spell, clapped his hands together, making a bell-like ringing sound, and put both palms to the cave floor. The stone beneath him moved and formed hard replica fists around his real ones. Smash! He immediately backhanded the nearest goblin, breaking its jaw. Sorry, I need some water. Smash! He immediately backhanded the nearest goblin, breaking its jaw. On either side, okay. On either side of him was Anenra and Dave slashing and chopping at any goblin, band, woman, or child in their path, while Zan pantsed over them and landed on his prey. "Kill them!" the chief shrieked. Once Olaf saw his dagger resting beside him, rapidly cooling. He reached out and grasped it southpaw, then brought it down on the chief's foot. The chief screamed again and began frantically slashing at Olaf's face with his dirty claws. Olaf writhed in pain and tried to shield his face from the mad creature. The chief grabbed the end of the spear sticking out of Olaf and began to yank. Hey! The chief stopped and looked up. Eyes bugged madly. Anenra stood a dozen yards away, his bloodied sword pointed at the chief. I made you a vow. Anenra's long sword once again suddenly lit up with the golden light of heaven with a loud crack, suddenly illuminating the entire cave. It was a true slaughter. Goblin parts, capitalized, goblin parts littered the stone floor all over, and blood was splashed on everything. Olaf had never seen his traveling companion's prowess until now, and if it were not for the immense pain he was in, he would be so overjoyed. The goblin war chief shrank back in fear and wildly looked about for an exit. A meat shield, any kind of salvation, but none were to be found. Anenra rushed up and leapt over Olaf, cleaving the creature from shoulder to hip, smiting the foul creature with the vengeance of all that was good. With no time to revel in his accomplishment, Anenra turned back to Olaf, covered in sweat, dirt, and goblin blood. Mio, do you have any healing spells? He quickly wiped the blood from his blade and sheathed it. Well, I didn't think I need a light spell, but you always need healing. Mio held up his stone fists and then they crumbled to the floor, leaving his real hands flexing. They knelt on either side of Olaf and assessed the damage. He was in a lot of pain. His face was crisscrossed mesh of lacerations, with a few strips of flesh hanging loose from his face. Meanwhile, the spear was still impaled directly through his abdomen. The only reason Olaf was still alive was because the goblins didn't remove the spear. But if they didn't remove it now, they couldn't heal him. Start healing his stomach while I slowly... Okay, so, alright. This part is not in Olaf's perspective, unfortunately. This is kind of in Olaf's perspective because he's just observing. Here, it's like, especially this part, like describing Olaf's like injuries is more from like Anenra's perspective than Olaf's perspective, and I need to change that. Mia hopped to the stone fist as he crumbled to the floor, leaving his real hands flexing. They knelt on either side of Olaf. I'm just gonna have to skip the description, I think, and then we'll describe like the aftermath of this later, as Olaf kind of like maybe like looks at his reflection. I'll have to make a note of that. I think the listener, that's Mia, the supplicant. Anenra awoke, that's Anenra. The berserker, that's Dave. The invader, Olaf. Okay, I'll make a note here. And well, actually, that's kind of far. So like oblation. Let's make a note here to describe Olaf's. Remember to describe Olaf's injuries. Comment. Okay. Then we'll go back. Start healing his stomach while I slowly remove the spear. Anenra pulled off his gauntlets and gripped the spear. Again, this is also kind of from Anenra's perspective. Our shooting branches sharpen on one end, the sharp is thinner than the shorter. Okay. Anenra pulled off his gauntlets and gripped the spear. Then began to... Olaf, on the count of 3, take a deep breath. 1, and then immediately be... Oh, wait, no. All right, I skipped a step. Olaf, on the count of 3, take a deep breath. 1, and then immediately begin pulling out the spear before Olaf had a chance to expect it. Olaf began to wriggle and writhe in pain. Dave, hold him down! Dave planted his war axe into a goblin carcass and came over to hold Olaf onto the stone. I think we can do without this part, because Olaf's probably not paying attention to Dave. Mio's hands began to glow with white light as he held them over Olaf's stomach, closing the wound around the stick as it was being pulled from him slowly but surely. Olaf struggled and pleaded with them to stop, but if they only had so much healing magic that they could use. Okay, so I think this part will have to just be... Okay, let me just reread. Well, I didn't think I need a light spell, but you always need healing. Mio held up his stone fists and they crumbled to the floor, leaving his real hands flexing. They knelt on either side of Olaf and immediately got to work. Started healing his stomach while I slowly removed the spear, and Enra pulled off his gauntlets and gripped the spear, then hesitated. Olaf, on the count of 3, take a deep breath. 1, and Enra immediately began pulling out the spear before Olaf had a chance to expect it. Olaf began to wriggle and writhe in pain. Dave, hold him down! Dave's large hand pinned Olaf's shoulders to the stone. Mio's hands began to glow with white light as he held them over Olaf's stomach, closing the wound around the stick as it was pulled from him slowly but surely. Olaf struggled against Dave's unmoving arms. Please stop, it hurts. We can't stop, we have to heal this wound in one go or you'll die. And Enra kept pulling until suddenly it was free of Olaf's body. The pit... I scrolled. Okay. And the pain was gone. Olaf finally relaxed, nearly passing out on the stone. Dave let Olaf go, and Enra shifted closer to Olaf's face. Now for the easy part. and Enra's hands glowed, same as Mio's had, and he held them over Olaf's face. You're going to have a lot of scars, I'm afraid. Olaf barely groaned in response. At the moment, he couldn't care less. He was barely even conscious. The paladin finished healing Olaf's face and pulled back his hands to look. Olaf's face was scarred all over, but luckily his eyes were intact and his nose hadn't been ripped off. Okay, again, this was... The paladin finished healing Olaf's face and pulled back his hands to look. Yeah, this is from an Enra's perspective. All in all, Olaf doesn't feel that way for sure. Olaf looked up at them all, completely relieved. Olaf barely groaned in response. At the moment, he couldn't care less. He was barely even conscious. Olaf looked up at them all, completely relieved of all pain, but utterly exhausted. Edinra clasped his arm to pull him up to his feet. Come on, let's get you a drink. Okay. Perfect time. It's going good. I just woke up, gotta finish my monster energy, and then I'm gonna continue writing my fanfic. That's the dream, baby! Yeah, my wife and I literally, like, we're addicted to monsters. Every morning is a monster energy drink. It's only been like an hour and a half, but I'm gonna take a short break. Gonna refill my water bottle and go use the bathroom. I think I'll leave the music. You know, I might change the music, but here's the BRB screen. Feel free to chat amongst yourselves. I will be back shortly. Maybe they'll pop back in once I'm reading. Chapter 3, What You Don't Know Can Kill You. 1. The Listener. Mio sat by the campfire, leaning back against Rex. Rex was curled around him, ripping and crunching part of the deer that Dave and Zan had hunted for the camp's dinner for that night. They had already Rex was curled around him, ripping and crunching part of the deer that Dave and Zan had hunted for the camp's dinner that night. They had already voraciously scarfed down their dinner and went to sleep. And Enra was off in a nearby stream, bathing off the goblin gore and cleaning his armor. Mio held some cooked venison, but he wasn't eating it. He was looking at Olaf, who was chewing on his own chunk of venison from under his green hood he kept covering his face with now. Mio felt bad for trying to leave Olaf behind, but the fact that Olaf was even alive was nothing short of a miracle. The Goblin Chief had slashed a crisscrossing pattern of lacerations that had left very ugly scars, and even took a small chunk of Olaf's nose and upper lip too. The man was speared through and through, just like the deer that they had on the skewer over the fire. Not going into that cave would have been the smart choice, but now Mio just felt like a coward. It was bad enough that humans looked down on gnomes for such behavior. It was bad enough that humans looked down on gnomes for such behavior, but... what? So I don't know if the humans look down on gnomes. The man was speared through and through, just like the deer that they had on the skewer over the fire. Not going into that cave would have been the smart choice, but now Mio just felt like a coward. It was bad enough that most humans look down on gnomes for such behavior, but to know that your choice would have left someone to die left a heavy weight sitting on Mio's chest. Mio thought humans were foolish for such recklessness. Their lives were short enough as it is. Mio himself was 56. For a gnome, he was still a young man, yet he was older than many humans ever lived. You don't get that old by jumping into goblin caves. They had been lucky the entire clan was caught off guard in the midst of their ritualistic orgy. Otherwise, they could have easily been overwhelmed or ambushed in that cave. Mio stood and walked around the fire to sit by Olaf. Hey, I just wanted to say I'm glad we got you out of there today. Don't be. It was stupid. Olaf practically growled it before ripping a chunk of meat with his teeth. Mio was taken aback. Aren't you glad to be alive? They were gonna sacrifice you down there. Olaf tosses me into the fire, apparently lost his appetite. I wouldn't have been down there in the first place if the paladin, he sneered the word, wasn't out here hunting for glory. Olaf stood, and now I'm uglier than ever. He turned and walked away from Mio to go lay on his sleeping roll. This did very little to comfort Mio's conscience. Is that the right spelling? That looks right. He briefly gave a moment of respect to the deer he had partially consumed before salting and wrapping the leftovers up and putting them away. After some time, Enenra returned with his armor and a large heavy bundle. I'll take the first watch, Mio offered. He wouldn't be able to sleep yet anyhow. Enenra nodded and all but collapsed onto his roll and passed out instantly. Mio sat cross-legged on the grass and listened to everything around him. To anyone else, the sounds of the forest and the night were merely the random noises of animals and insects. But to Mio, it was a chorus of creatures communicating like a vast hub of conversation. The little male crickets played their songs to attract little cricket wives. A proud owl hooted in the dark and claimed dominion over their grove. Some foxes yipped at each other flirtatiously. A little hedgehog grunted like a pig as it rummaged about for food. A jay called out to warn its family of danger. Then another did the same, and a few more. Mio opened his eyes and looked about, alarmed. The fire was mere embers now, and there was barely any light to see. But for a gnome, it was enough to peer into the tall grasses for stalking predators. Mio saw nothing yet, but the animals had all become eerily quiet. Something was out there. Mio nudged Rex and roused him. Rex reluctantly awoke and began to sense Mio's unease. He too craned his bird-like neck about this way and that and sniffed the air for a scent. Mio watched and waited, seeing no movement but the grass swaying in the breeze. He watched and waited, seeing no movement but the grass swaying in the breeze. He slowly turned in a circle, studying every shadow. He saw nothing. He heard nothing. Then something touched him. Mio whipped around and a blur of a creature darted into the grass and fled. He didn't have a chance to see what it was, but it had cut and stolen Mio's bag that had hung from his belt. The fact that it had snuck up on the both of them unnerved Mio intensely, and the fact that it was seemingly intelligent only compounded that feeling. Rex had also floofed out all his feathers defensively. Clearly, he had also been caught off guard. This was no goblin. Mio would have spotted a goblin, even a particularly sneaky one, before it was able to touch him. Mio wasn't sure what this thing was. He went to the fire and quickly used the embers to light a torch. He held the fire over the ground the creature had come and fled from the observed tracks it had left behind. It was humanoid. It was barefoot, about the size of a man, or at the very least had the foot size of one, like a halfling perhaps. Even then, it didn't explain how it could sneak up on Mio like this. This could be a particularly feral wizard, perhaps? Mio wasn't personally acquainted with persons of the wizardly arts, but more than a few had been known to go mad in their arcane pursuits. Regardless, it seemed to be gone. It could still be out there watching him, but Mio suspected it would not return on the same night now that he was aware of its existence. He calmed Rex's floofed feathers and eased him back into a sitting position. Mio crouched by his big bird until the animals began to make noises again. It was only then did Mio breathe easy. He continued to watch the shadows and listen to the animals chatter amongst each other. He knew they would warn him again should the things return. Mio wondered why it had stolen his bag. He only kept herbs, small animal parts like feathers, claws, or bones, and some stones. These were all things he needed to cast his spells from time to time. Had the stealthy creature mistaken it for a coin purse, or had it wanted to prevent Mio from casting the spells he needed them for? The last possibility was more troubling. That the thing had identified Mio as a druid on only its first glimpse of the gnome, and chosen to take his spell components from the thing, then the thing may be strategically attempting to weaken the group's defenses for an attack. An attack from whom, and for what end? Mio couldn't say. The supplicant. Enenra, it's time for your watch. Enenra awoke several hours before the sun would rise, as he always did. He immediately slipped out of his sleeping roll and began sorting the many pieces of his armor, and began donning it. It was a long process that would require Mio's help before he could finally sleep. Something happened while you all slept, Mio said as he helped Enenra into his chestplate. As they put iron plates all over Anenra's body, Mio explained his encounter with this mysterious, supernaturally stealthy creature. As soon as Mio finished recounting his watch, a glass bottle landed in the grass next to him. They both looked up just in time to have seen a raccoon wave down at them and then leapt onto a nearby tree branch, scurrying off in the dim morning. Mio picked up the bottle and inspected it. It contained a green liquid with a small, shiny specks that swirled around as he sloshed it back and forth. There was a tag tied around the bottle of the neck which read, "This potion shall delay any poisonous substance in thy veins." Mio shrugged and gratefully pocketed the bottle. That was odd. And then decided to ignore the strange critter and return to the subject. If this stealthy creature isn't natural by your knowledge, then I fear it could be a demon of some kind. Their forms are infinite and their ways never make sense. But if it intentionally stole your spell components, then it may not be a powerful one. Otherwise, it would have simply devoured us in our sleep. I'm not so sure it was a demon, but I can't say you're wrong just yet. Keep your eyes peeled tonight, and if you hear the jays calling, wake us. Mio went back to where Rex lay and joined him beside the big feather. Mio went back to where Rex lay and joined beside the big feathery monster, pulling his chicken wing over him like a blanket. And Enra had no my brain is frying. And Enra had no idea which bird calls were jays or not, but his Archon eyes were definitely peeled. He stood guard and peered into the darkness for several hours, waiting for the creatures to return. There was not a hint of evil about, but the eyes did not let him see in the dark. He had to see creatures before he could determine if it was evil. When the sun rose, he felt safe enough to begin his daily prayers. He knelt before the sunrise and whispered, "I ask the maimed god to guide my blade to the throats of the wicked. I ask the broken god to watch over my friend Olaf, for his suffers greatly. I ask the true god to lead me to victory." Then he recited his oaths. "I swear to protect the weak and smite the wicked. I swear to uphold the law and deliver justice. I am the sword and shield of heaven. I am the beacon in the long night." It wasn't until he had finished his prayer and he felt truly rested. Today was a new day, and he potentially knew evil was afoot. And then Enra began to prepare a breakfast for the party. There wasn't much, some salted meat and hard biscuit rations he kept for this expedition. He wasn't much of a hunter. The other three were all much better suited and equipped for that. Creeping around in the bushes, looking for unsuspecting animals didn't really suit Enra. He yearned for open battle. He got a taste of it yesterday with those goblins, but they were undisciplined and ill-equipped combatants. And Enra was out here not only to defeat evil, but to be tested by it. He wanted a true fight, a duel against some great demon lord on the open field under the sun perhaps. Such a thing would surely send most men running, only to be devoured as they fled, but not him. And Enra was a paladin. He was trained for this since he was 6 years old. Paladins were blessed with the power of heaven to protect mankind against the strongest and most ancient evils that threatened to plunge the world into darkness. But he was untested. He had been the youngest paladin to be knighted in history and was tasked with the mission to prove his worth. And that's exactly what he aimed to do. The others didn't seem to think his mission was important, but he knew they simply didn't see the bigger picture. The cosmically grand war that had been waging for all eternity was at stake. The war of negentropy and entropy, law and chaos. Their mortal lives were insignificant in the wake of such a vast war. Even if Enra died today, his duty would not end. His soul would be sent to heaven, where he could join the legions of Archons against the hordes of the abyss. But that would probably not happen today. Today, he roused his friends and gave them their breakfast. It wasn't much, but it was warm. Mio ate his breakfast thankfully and went with his beast to meditate in peace. Dave devoured the meat but left the biscuits. His jaguar Zan slunk off into the woods to hunt for his own meal. Olaf didn't eat but gathered his things to go. As a part of Enra felt sorry for Olaf's scarred face, but he knew Olaf was fortunate to be alive, and he should be proud to have helped them slay so many goblins yesterday. Perhaps he would feel differently when they returned to Shriekbush and the people there knew of his heroism. After another hour, the sun had risen enough to send shafts of golden light through the tree branches. It would rise all the way into the sky, for it was the month of dawn. Actually, okay. So I retconned it. God damn it, Charlie. Does it show it? Yes. Okay, so I retconned the calendar a little bit. Plains. So now, yeah, dawn is in spring, but it should be like break. After another hour, the sun had risen enough to send shafts of golden light through the tree branches. It would rise all the way into the sky, for it was the month of break, the 4th month of the year. That should be like the 1st. Yeah, it's the 1st. The 1st month in the year, this land was called Slove, and in the summer the sun would rise higher and stop setting entirely sometime in the 6th month sun. Okay, this is also not true. You know, I wonder if I should even bother going into detail about all this fucking calendar bullshit. Hello, Charlie. Daddy streaming. My Google Docs disconnect. After another hour, the sun had risen enough to send shafts of golden light through the tree branches. This month was the first month of spring, which meant that it was the first month where the sun, Kale, rose above the horizon and into the sky. The winter had been thankfully uneventful. There were a few monster sightings near the walls of the city, but none had attacked. Once the party had returned from camp, their various morning rituals, and Nenro spoke to Olaf, who sat on his back and smoked from a wooden pipe, with his hood concealing his face. That sentence kind of sucks. Once the party had returned to camp from their various morning rituals, Nenra sought out Olaf. The ranger was bundled up in his shabby green cloak with only a smoking pipe poking out from under the hood. Are you ready to continue hunting? It has tracks this time. Olaf looked up sharply, his green eyes glaring at the night. He stood up abruptly. He stood up abruptly, staring him down face to face. What? I did my job, and now I'm taking you back to Shriekbush to get paid. And Enra could see Olaf's scars in great detail now, and his tobacco smoke made Enra's eyes sting. But he didn't blink. My mission is to slay a great evil. Goblins don't count. Olaf's fist clenched as he growled like a dog, and Enra warned him, remember the penalty for attacking a paladin is imprisonment and sometimes death. He put his hand on his sword hilt, but otherwise did not move or flinch. Only if you win, said the ranger in a low, dangerous voice. Charlie, why are you clinging onto me, dude? Only if you win, said the ranger in a low, dangerous voice. And Enra's power to smite the evil was only effective against creatures tainted by evil, and Olaf knew this. But that did not mean Enra was powerless. He was fully suited in plate mail, made from good steel with superior craftsmanship. The ranger had no such armor, only lightweight leather. However, he had the home turf advantage and ranged weaponry. The berserker. Enra and Olaf stood eye to eye, daring the other to make the first move. Enra couldn't attack unprovoked, and Olaf wanted to see if his anger would overrun his sense of self-righteousness first. It reminded Dave of his old tribe, full of orcs that constantly fought each other over stupid things that didn't matter. He couldn't take it. Dave rushed up to them and pushed them apart. No fight! He stood between them and his twin axes ready, not to hurt them, but as a barrier should they strike back. Zan, Mio, and Rex joined him to prevent the scuffle. Metal Man being bad leader, Dave accused Nenra. Olaf laughed once before Dave turned to him. Olaf being bad tracker, which earned him another glare from the Ranger. Mio joined in. He's right. Olaf deserves the money you promised for tracking the goblins, and Nenra deserves your respect for saving your life. Rex and Zan both growled to emphasize the point. Both Nenra and Olaf burst with protest simultaneously. That wasn't the deal, and he's the reason I almost died. Dave roared at the both of them to silence them. After a breath, he pointed his axes at each of them and said, Metal Man pay Olaf for every goblin head. Olaf track more evil things for Metal Man. Stop fighting or you both leave tribe. Dave planted his weapon in the dirt beside him, standing authoritatively. Olaf crossed his arms. I want 40 gold dragons, one for each goblin. And then mirrored the posture. You didn't kill all the goblins. We did. I'll give you 40 silver dragons. 39 silver and one gold dragon for the fat one that did this to my face. Olaf pulled the hood down and let them all see his ugly, disfigured face. You could see some of his teeth because the corner of his mouth was missing. Dave wasn't sure why Olaf hid his scars. Scars were the marks of a warrior. An orc with scars like that could have any woman in the tribe. And Nenra softened a little. Deal. But only if you find the thing that stole from us last night. It could be the evil I'm looking for. I'll pay you for this one as well. Plus, my money is being held safely in Shriekbush. We can return there after we find the creature for resupply. Olaf thought about it, but relented. Describe the thing. That's the problem. We don't know what it looks like, Mio explained, and then he recounted the events a second time. After he finished the tale, of Raccoon, possibly the same one, waddled up to Mio and dropped another potion bottle at the gnome's feet and scurried away. The others watched it go in astonishment. Mio squatted in the grass and examined the new bottle. It was hard to tell what it was. The contents were hard to look at for some reason, just gray and very blurry. Dave thought instantly about the gnome's tail. Dave know this thing. Orc shamans say it be a lurk. They're very sneaky peoples that run around naked because their skin change colors. They in the trees. They look like trees. They in the grass. They look like grass. Charlie, get away from me. They sneak into camps and take stuff. Food, weapons, babies, gold, anything. Warriors catched one. It was small, like an elf, but with round ears, like a human. When they killed Zit, its skin gray, like rocks, and it have no hair anywhere. Did you just say babies? Mio asked incredulously. Yeah, orc babies and slave babies. Shaman says Lurks eats them probably. The other three shared bewildered looks. And Nenra's resolve was hardened by this. Then we must definitely hunt this lurk down immediately. Olaf, lead the way, please. Olaf gave a sarcastic bow. As you command, my liege. Dave was glad he was showing their leader respect again, and shouldered his twin axe to go. Mia pointed out the tracks to Olaf, and he began to follow them. Dave figured lurks must have very small feet, because Olaf had to follow it very slowly to track it. While they followed Olaf leisurely, Mio was scrounging around in the dirt and digging up stones and roots and squirreling them away in a bag. Dave had never met a gnome before, and in fact was not even aware that Mio was a gnome. He assumed that Mio was actually a young human boy who had been granted magical power by his pet bird. Perhaps he was a Nenra's son? Maybe he'll ask him later. And Nenra followed Olaf closely and watched the woods around him vigilantly, waiting for an ambush or trap. He kept his hand resting on his sword at all times. Dave kept his distance a little further behind so that if his madness overtook him, he would not hurt them by accident. He was not alone though. He always had his kitty cat Zan with him. The sleek black jaguar was his constant companion. He even helped keep Dave from going mad sometimes. Dave didn't know why he went mad. It happened suddenly. One second he was calm and sane, the next he was frothing at the mouth and attacking wildly at anything and everything around him. He couldn't think when it happened and often couldn't remember what happened when he did. It was why he was shunned from the orc tribe. Not because he was violent, but because he was berserk. Dave destroyed things around him and sometimes hurt others when he didn't mean to. Dave didn't really miss them that much though. The orcs were always mean, always fighting. And Dave didn't really know why. He asked the shaman why, and the shaman told him he's not a real orc. The shaman told Dave he was born of a slave woman, a human girl that had been taken many years ago, and did not live through Dave's birth. That was why Dave wasn't as mean as the other orcs, and why, according to the shaman, Dave was mad. He said that the spirit of the slave woman possessed Dave for revenge. Dave had no choice but to believe him, since nobody else could tell him why he acted this way. Dave tried not to think about his old tribe and the shaman and the poor. Dave tried not to think about his old tribe and the shaman and the poor slaves they sometimes kept to breed more orcs. He didn't want to be a real orc anyway. Besides the fits of madness he endured, he liked himself the way he was. Besides the fits of madness he endured, he liked himself the way he was, and he liked his kitty cat Zan. Dave remembered when he found Zan. The little jaguar cub was lost in the woods, and the other orcs were talking about skinning him for his pelt. Dave didn't want that to happen, so he fought them for Zan, and took a good beating for it, but he won. So he got to keep Zan. He looked at Zan now, plodding along beside him, much larger than he was then. Dave gave the cat a scratch between the ears and kept walking. He hoped they found the lurk. They usually had good things in their dens if you could ever find them. Suddenly Zan's ears perked up. The sleek black cat sniffed the air and growled low and deep in his throat. Dave immediately gripped his twin axe in a ready position and began to scan his surroundings, ready to chop anything that moved in half. "Look here!" He called out to the others ahead. "What? I said..." Something moved. A patch of tall grass rustled. Dave did not hesitate and screamed an orcish war cry, leapt into the tall grass, bringing one of the 4 axe blades down with unstoppable force. His blade found only dirt, and it buried itself almost completely in. He yanked out the axe, and a chunk of grass and dirt came along with it. He whirled around looking for the lurk. All he saw were trees, shrubs, and grass. It could be anywhere. He could feel the madness creeping in, pushing him to attack. Zan crouched low in the grass, ears flattening down on his head. He bared his teeth quietly, watching Dave looking for the predator. Dave lost his nerve and chopped his axe into a tree entirely at random. Mere inches away from where the blade had sunk into the wood, a pair of solid black eyes opened wide and looked at Dave. Dave was startled for a moment before it clicked in his mind that they were not the tree's eyes, but the lurk's, who had been standing with his back against the tree, and his skin looked exactly like the bark. The split-second hesitation was all the opportunity the lurk needed to pull a slim dagger out and slash across Dave's ribs as it ducked under Dave's left hook and darted out into the forest incredibly fast. The split-second hesitation was all the opportunity the lurk needed to pull a slim dagger hidden behind its back. It lashed out and slashed across Dave's ribs as it ducked under Dave's left hook and darted out into the forest incredibly fast. Stan bolted out from the grass in pursuit of the chameleon-skinned creature. The others rushed to the scene as Dave yanked his twin axe from the tree trunk and pointed in the direction of the lurk and the jaguar. "That way!" Emil pointed at Dave's ribs. "Are you okay?" Dave looked down at the bloody gash. "Just a scratch. Come on. Zen has scent." He hefted the big pole arm horizontally with his good arm and took off at an even pace. They couldn't possibly catch Zen even at a sprint, so they had to make a sustainable pace. They ran for a couple of miles. Olaf took the lead, deftly moving through the underbrush and around the trees gracefully as he followed the trail effortlessly. Then followed Mio, riding his floofy bird beast, who kept pace with Olaf easily, carelessly stomping through the bushes. And Enro struggled to follow him in his heavy armor, sweating and panting as he noisily clinked and clanked past Dave. "Catch up, Dave. Dave?" Enro looked back and saw Dave vomiting onto a tree. "Man, stop. Something's wrong with Dave." Dave felt awful. His stomach hurt like the time he ate a brightly colored frog. He heaved some more despite his stomach being empty. His vision was blurry. He could barely make out the shadowy shapes surrounding him. He shakily flailed his fist at one of them in a panic. "Hold him down," one of the blurry shadows commanded. They converged on Dave and pinned him to the dirt. Then one of them cast a spell on him. The invader. Olaf helped helped hold down Dave as his veins began to glow through his gray skin. Mio finished casting his spell and said, "He's been poisoned with bloodroot." Mio fished in his pack for the 2 potions, stuffed the blurry one back in, and pulled the cork from the green one. Hold his mouth open. Dave weakly struggled with some more as Enra managed to pull his jaw down using a tusk as a handle. Mio poured the contents down the barbarian's gullet. He better not throw it back up. Dave swallowed the potion and finally fainted, completely exhausted and defeated. Enra propped him up against the tree that wasn't vomited on and began cleaning the orc. So he's cured now, right? No, that potion will only delay the poison's progress. We have at least a few hours to make an antidote. Mio slung his pack over his shoulder and hopped on Rex. How are you going to do that? If the lurk uses this poison often, it has likely immunized itself to it, which means I need its blood. Watch over Dave. Olaf and I will return with the antidote shortly. Mio kicked Rex's side and he sprinted off with a squawk. Olaf, find Zan and get the lurk's blood, and then recommended. Olaf crossed his arms. I want hazard pay. We'll negotiate that after your next performance review. And then waved him off exasperatedly. The lurk, now. Olaf shrugged and ran to catch up with Rex. Zan had pursued the lurk much further than Olaf expected a jaguar to do. Feline predators were not stamina pursuit hunters like humanoids and wolves. They stalked slowly and quietly and pounced when they've closed in. But Zan had been running for a long time, not stalking. Olaf knew he would come to the end of his trail soon. Either Zan would finally collapse and give up, or he would have finally caught the lurk. If the lurk escaped the jaguar or somehow slew the beast, there was a chance it could have looped around and was waiting in ambush, like it had before when it cut Dave. Olaf warily watched his surroundings closely as he jogged through the trees, often stopping when he heard a strange noise or saw something he didn't recognize. He even shot a small animal that rustled a nearby bush by accident. He hoped Mio wouldn't see it on the way here, but didn't bother to conceal the crime. The ranger finally found the big black cat, laying on his flank, panting heavily, next to a concerned Mio and an unconcerned Rex. Zan seemed to have given up the chase. Mio took out his water skin and poured some into the beast's muzzle, who lapped it greedily. Once the water was gone, Zan licked at his paws, which Olaf noticed had some blood on them. Perhaps the lurk had been injured. If so, it may be unwilling to attack again. Unless it had a healing potion stashed away, of course. A creature as stealthily as a lurk undoubtedly had stolen a small hoard of magic items, and minor healing potions were common enough to find. If Olaf tracked it to its stash, he could finish it off and make off with more loot than Adenra's coin purse could afford, maybe. Mio spoke to the cat now. When you have rested, run back to Dave. He's with Adenra. Olaf had no clue if the beast understood the druid. Zan simply laid his head down for a nap. Olaf led the way through the trees. He had been tracking it slowly before because it was extraordinarily cautious. It had left as few tracks as possible and then looped back around to ambush them. After it successfully fled the jaguar, it resumed its usual method of attempting to cover its tracks by walking on stones and roots and stepping lightly. However, it was clumsier now, and small drops of blood can be seen on the leaves and stones. If its hideaway wasn't near, they may just stumble upon its collapsed body after all. Olaf wasn't a religious man, but he silently prayed to whichever god favored thieves in hope that the lurk led it to its stash. By the time they came to the end of their trail, the springtime sun had risen to its zenith. The trail led into some hermit's cabin. It looked abandoned from the outside, overgrown with vines and moss, and even missing some of its roof. They watched it warily from the bushes, some few dozen yards away. The trail may have led them here, but they couldn't be sure how long ago it came here and if it was still here or not. They could be looking right at the fucker and it would be looking right back at them, and they wouldn't even know it. What do you think? How should we do this? Mio whispered to the ranger. No chance of sending Rex in to sniff it out? Mio punched Olaf's arm as hard as his short gnomish arm could. No, at least not alone. You should sneak around to the opposite side of the clearing, then give us a signal. I'll create a bank of fog to obscure the clearing, then Rex and I will approach from here, and you will approach from there. Olaf reflected on it. Obscuring the vision might be risky, but if the creature doesn't see them coming, then they may catch it off guard and may even the odds. Alright, I'll give an owl call when I'm in position. Hey Olaf. Mio stopped Olaf and hesitated. I just wanted to say, back when you were in that goblin cave, save it. He angrily crept away, quietly through the trees and bushes, making a wide arc around the clearing, keeping his eyes and ears peeled all along the way with bow and arrow ready to fly at a moment's notice. He didn't need to be distracted by Mio's pity, not when the hunt was afoot. When Olaf made it to the opposite side, he gave a loud and recognizable horned owl territorial call. He waited for a short moment, watching the lonely, quiet cabin. Slowly, a bank of fog crept around the edges and enveloped the area in gray. Olaf put his arrow back in its quiver, slung the bow over his shoulder, pulled out a hatchet from his belt. He could barely see the vague, shadowy edges of the cabin as he crept slowly, foot over foot, in a low, quiet stance. His heart was the only thing he could hear. It pounded anxiously in his chest as he approached a window. He peeked inside, but the pane was dusty. It seemed cluttered, overturned chairs and a table. Many items scattered about, some broken. It was too dim and the window too dusty to make anything distinct. He crept around to the door. He found the big silhouette of Mio and Rex waiting for him. Rex seemed hazier than usual, as if Olaf was still looking at him through the dusty window pane. Olaf chalked it up to druid magic and signaled to Mio that he was ready. Mio nodded, then patted Rex's rump to get him to sit and guard the front of the door, then pulled a flint knife from a sheath and held it ready. Olaf reached over and put his free hand on the door handle, and with his hatchet, held up three fingers and counted down. 3, 2, 1. Olaf burst through the door and held the hatchet high. Mio burst in behind him with the knife held before him. They both froze. The cabin seemed empty. Nothing had moved. The magical fog rolled between their legs into the cabin. Broken glass littered the floorboards. Furniture scattered about. Knives and axes had been thrown against the wall and stuck there. Excuse me, I need water. Okay. Olaf slowly crept into the room, looking for the lurk, looking for eyes or an odd shape, looking for anything. The floor creaked with every step. His heart beat faster and harder as he studied the walls, the furniture, every corner. They stood in the middle of the cabin and slowly looked all around, back to back. Nothing moved, nothing breathed. Silence. Then a light creaking right above them. Olaf snapped his head up. The lurk clung to the rafter, its skin colored and patterned to resemble the wooden boards of the ceiling. Its poison dagger held by the handle between its bare teeth. Its black eyes leered wide and murderous down upon them. After a single heartbeat, the lurk swung from the rafters, landing at a sprint for the front door. It skittered shortly as it suddenly came face to face with the adolescent Tyrannosaurus Rex. The adolescent Tyrannosaurus. Rex reared himself up and floofed his blurry feathers out in a menacing display. He roared loudly, sounding like a cross between a lion and an eagle. Olaf and Mio wordlessly spread out somewhat, boxing the thing in. There was nowhere for it to go, which only made it more dangerous. Olaf raised his hatchet, about to lunge, but he was suddenly slashed across the back from behind. He fell to one knee and with wide eyes of panic looked and saw a second lurk standing over him with a short sword raised high, ready to end Olaf right then and there. At that moment, everything burst into motion. Why did the thing stop? Okay. Olaf raised his hatchet, about to lunge, but he was suddenly slashed across the back from behind. He fell to one knee and with wide eyes of panic looked and saw a second lurk standing over him with a short sword, raised high, ready to end Olaf right then and there. At that moment, everything burst into motion. Rex pounced on the lurk before him, while Mio turned on the new one. He slashed his flint knife across the thing's thigh, causing it to hiss and step away from its death blow. Mio quickly held his offhand palm up, and a small ball of flame appeared in it. Mio hurled it at the lurk, burning his bare skin. Then a new ball replaced the previous one, and he hurled that as well. The first lurk was being savagely mauled and dragged back and forth as it desperately stabbed at the bird beast again and again. Olaf quickly returned to his feet and brought the hatchet down on the thing's deck. It gurgled and choked on its own blood as it went limp, dropping the dagger. Rex continued to rip it apart savagely. No, the other lurk cried out in agony. Its skin now flashed from a camouflaged wood pattern to a deep blue. Olaf held a clear view of its body now, and would see that it resembled a human woman. Her face was contorted in rage at the two intruders before her. Olaf realized that these two must have been mates. Mio stopped hurling his fire, but kept his throwing arm cranked back. You speak the common tongue? Olaf yanked the hatchet out of the other lurk's neck and turned to the woman lurk. Where is the antidote? Tell us and you will live. He pointed the hatchet at her menacingly. He already felt woozy and didn't have time for the drama. She looked between the dinosaur, the gnome, and the man. She dropped her sword and weakly pointed to the tattered rug near the corner. Olaf side-eyed it and said, Show me. She shuffled to it and pulled it back, revealing a basement door. Mio dispelled the fireball in his hand. Good, you may leave. Olaf's hatchet swung end over end through the air, buried itself in the lurk's skull. She dropped like a sack of potatoes over the trapdoor. Mio turned on Olaf. What the fuck? You said she could go. Olaf staggered to the lurk. I lied. She would have slit our throats in our sleep if we let her go. He once again yanked his hatchet out, then shoved her off the door. He struggled to pull it open and went down the stairs. The basement was just as cluttered as the cabin was, but the contents seemed more useful. Most of the basement was full of empty barrels and crates, having had their winter stockpile been depleted. But there was some loot here, just as the ranger suspected. Olaf and Mio quickly found the poisoner's kit and the antidotes. Mio gave Olaf a dose, then ran back up and gave Rex one as well. After attending to Rex, Mio came back down the stairs. I still have a healing spell today. Would you like me to fix your back before I go give Dave the antidote? It did hurt to breathe a little. What about Rex? He's got a thick hide. He's fine. Olaf grunted in response and struggled to pull his ruined and bloody cloak off, then his shirt. He sat at the bottom of the stairs while Mio came to sit just above him to get a good look at the gash. After a second, Olaf felt his back stitching itself together. It itched like hell. Olaf looked over his shoulder at the gnome whose hands glowed against his back. You're not going to tell Anenra about killing the lurk, right? Olaf knew that Anenra would probably accuse him of murder and drag him to Shriekbush to be hanged, even if she was a monster. And no, you're right. Letting her go would have only put us in more danger. Anenra wouldn't be happy about it, but there's no reason to tell him. Olaf grunted again, satisfied. Miro cleared his throat. Listen, when you were captured, this again, Olaf was getting really tired of this gnome's pity. I didn't want to go into that cave. I thought you were as good as dead, and I argued with Anenra to not go down there. He insisted he was going to do it with or without me, so I went too. I shouldn't have been such a coward. I should have known. You were right. What? Mio's hands flickered for a moment. He's an idiot. I was as good as dead. Going in there was suicidal. Olaf wouldn't have done it. That was for sure. This time, Mio's hands stopped glowing completely, but Olaf was practically sealed up anyway. How can you still say that? We saved your life. Oh yeah, and what's that worth? What do you want? You want my eternal gratitude? Olaf got up and stalked to the other side of the dark basement, only lit by the shaft of gray light filtered by the magical fog through the trapdoor. I didn't ask for your help, and I don't need it. Here. Olaf angrily tossed another antidote at Mio, who almost dropped it as he bounced off his chest. Go save someone else. Olaf turned his new scar back on Mio and started going through the loot. Mio closed his hand around the antidote and stood up on the stairs. I'll bring the others back here as soon as I treat Dave. Don't expect me to still be here. I'm taking my cut and leaving. Mio clenched his fists and shouted down at the man. Why do you have to be such a miserable dick all the time? Olaf was taken aback at the sudden outburst. Mio continued, you're lucky to be alive, and yeah, you're ugly. Magic can fix that. You can take a pile of gold and go drink yourself to death now, but you'll never get an opportunity like this again. When we're done slaying things, all the people of Sylvia are gonna be shouting our names and calling us heroes, and you'll still be a sad drunk. Mio stormed back up the stairs, leaving Olaf alone in the dark. What's the face capture application that you're running? VTube Studio. Off of Steam. Here, let me show you. No. Yeah. Yeah, V2 Studio is really neat. I drew. Thanks to that. Yeah, I drew this this pumpkin head myself. I'm gonna make a body soon. My next art stream, I'm probably gonna be designing and making the body for him. His name's Havoc. He's the beheaded biker. What kind of novel am I writing? I'm writing a fantasy novel. It is very loosely based off of my homebrew D&D campaign that I've been running for like over 10 years. Charlie, get off of my computer. But yeah, thanks for asking. Color picker. DMing. All right. My cats want to be fed. Baby, if you're listening to the stream, can you come feed the cats? Please and thank you. All right, chapter 4, Cabin Fever. 1. The Nostalgic. Mio brought Anenra, Dave, and Zan to the cabin later that evening. Dave was slung across Rex's back, who was unhappy with the unaccustomed weight. Anenra wished he had been the one to slay the lurks, but he was glad Dave was going to live. The magical fog had dispersed by then, and the sun was approaching the tops of the trees, leaving warm shafts of light through their branches. Once they got to the cabin, Olaf could be seen outside scrubbing his cloak and shirt on the washboard. If Mio was surprised, he didn't let on. He hadn't told Anenra of their argument, or that Olaf had planned to leave them. The paladin marched right up to the ranger and simply commanded report. Olaf sighed exasperatedly, then continued scrubbing the bloody garments. We found 2 lurks, 1 male, 1 female, slew them both, nearly died. Found their loot, including the antidotes to their poisons. They had some meager rations, which explained why they were out searching for new victims. They had a poisoner's kit, a short sword, and 5 daggers, all in acceptable conditions. There was also some sort of spell scroll, a blurry potion, and various coin purses worth roughly 75 dragons altogether. I'll keep the gold and the sword as my cut. Mio can take the magical stuff since it's been more useful to him. Anedra raised an eyebrow. Your cut? This is my expedition, and everything we find is mine to divvy out as I see fit. Olaf turned to look up at the paladin for the first time. His mangled face made his glare especially biting. Oh yeah, and which lurk did you kill? How many scars did you earn today? Were you poisoned? We're not your troop that you can just order around. If you want my help hunting all these dangerous creatures, then we're gonna work together as equals. The strange raccoon from before was in the process of delivery when Olaf gave that scathing response. It awkwardly looked at them both for a moment before it dropped its item and ran away. Olaf snatched it and stowed it away without looking at it. Anenra scowled, then reflected. Olaf was right. He had been treating them as his subordinates, but they were civilians, not soldiers. If Anenra kept acting as a commander, Olaf would only become less cooperative. Without a ranger, Anenra would have no way to navigate these woods. You're right. You earned the dragons, and from now on, I'll leave all ranging decisions to you, but we'll choose the targets together. And in the future, we'll be deciding how to divide loot together. Olaf seemed surprised. Well, alright then. He returned to his washing with renewed vigor. Anenra then went to examine the bodies of the lurks. They looked strange and alien. What was left of them anyway? Olaf had unceremoniously dragged them out of the cabin and left them to the carry-on. Anenra shooed the birds away and looked the corpses over. The male The male had been properly mauled by Rex, it seems, except for one solid strike to the throat, which had probably been the killing blow. A mercy, really. The female was mostly untouched, except for a suspicious blow to the back of the head. Attacking someone from behind was dishonorable to the paladin, but it was probably for the best in the end. Mio approached as Anenra was looking the corpses over. She caught us by surprise as we had the other one surrounded. When Olaf slew the man, she screamed out in grief. She attacked me then, and Olaf took her down as well. As Mio spoke his lie, he could see the raccoon in the corner of his vision angrily waving a potion bottle at him before running off with it. Mio ignored it and looked back at Anenra. Do you think the lurks loved one another? Anenra looked over at Mio from his kneeling position by the corpses, eye to eye. It's very possible. It's a common misconception that evil beings cannot love. Loving another doesn't make you inherently good either. In fact, it can very easily poison your judgment and lead you down the path of corruption. Mio was surprised. Do paladins abstain from love? Not always. There are no commandments forbidding a paladin from love, and our oaths do not prevent us from marriage either, but it is heavily discouraged. Earthly attachments like that distract us from our destiny in heaven. Mio whistled low. I couldn't imagine living such a chaste life, personally. Love is one of nature's greatest gifts, and to forsake pleasure is hardly living. And Enra cracked a small smile. Well, I never said I was chaste. Mio's jaw dropped. Enra, I didn't know you had fun. Come on, I think I saw a bottle of wine in the basement. We can swap stories of fair maidens over a drink. They left the corpses to the scavengers and went inside. As Enra began the arduous task of removing his armor, Mio found a broom and swept the glass into a corner and righted the pieces of furniture that still had legs. Olaf joined them as well and silently got a fire going. Dave was still unconscious on the only cot, while Zan slept across the orc's legs. Rex, too big and clumsy to stay inside, yet somehow nimble enough to manage to jump onto the roof, now sat atop the cabin like a rooster. A very large and toothy rooster. See my VTube settings? Oh. Thank you, baby. Close. There we go. Yeah. Is this a... Oh, this is some bardcore. I love bardcore. Mia found that bottle of wine and some edible rations for the night. The three that were conscious sat before the fire as the chill spring night settled about the cabin. The cabin soon filled with the smell of wine and tobacco smoke from Olaf's pipe. They spoke of women they had known and loved and shared previous nights with. Mia was full of stories of girls, both gnomish, human, dwarvish, and even an elf. Olaf spoke mostly of the girls from his favorite brothel, and some of their exotic services he had afforded from time to time. So what about you, Anindra? How many maidens have warmed your pious bed? Mio and Olaf leaned in closely, eagerly waiting as the paladin was put on the spot. The platinum-haired man smiled ruefully at the sudden turn of conversation. He had been rather content listening to the other two. Well, mostly Mio. Well, there was one girl. And Mio filled Anindra's glass once more. Oh, do tell. She must be special. She is. Anindra's gaze drifted to the fire, fondly reminiscent. Her name is Emmeline. We grew up together in Skall. As children, we dreamed of becoming knights and fought each other with sticks. When we were both old enough, we volunteered to become squires. It was hard work and training was brutal, but working with her made it worthwhile. Olaf nearly let his pipe go cold, waiting expectantly. So, how was she in bed? Mio punched his arm on Anindra's behalf, knocking the pipe out of his mouth. The paladin smiled in embarrassment. I would never dishonor her that way. Well, once I return victorious, I shall ask her to marry me. Olaf snickered silently to himself and muttered maidenless under his breath. Mio downed the last of his wine and asked, what was Stewpold like? I've heard it's very large and fancy. Large, yes, but fanciful decorations were mostly stolen after the Dragon War. When High Priest Wyron reclaimed the castle some few decades ago, it was in very rough shape, or so I'm told. They spent many years repairing the damage and refortifying it. It's almost as good as it once was, but the stoop is still cursed. What's a stoop? Olaf asked, having repacked his pipe. And how is it cursed? Mio added. The stoop was a spring of holy water that flowed beneath Stewpold. It is the reason Stewpold was built centuries ago. But after the Dragon War destroyed part of the Stewpold and it was abandoned, the stoop has become bloody and diseased. It radiates a cursed energy and nothing grows for miles around. The church cannot afford to continue buying food from the outer villages. Additionally, this curse has severed the church's connection to heaven. Their prayers have gone unanswered, and their spells all fail. Olaf had relit his pipe with a burning twig from the fireplace. But you can use magic. And Enra nodded. I am the first paladin in over a decade to have been granted their power. That's why Wyron sent me on this crusade. If I can smite some great evil on Wyron's behalf, then heaven may lift our curse. How can you be so sure that will work? Mio attempted to pour more wine, but only got a drop for the effort. He set the empty bottle aside, and Enra shook his head. We don't, but I have faith in Wyron. Olaf blew a ring of smoke that floated lazily toward the ceiling. What's he like? Wyron? And then finally set his glass aside as well. Yeah, is it true he's of angelic descent? Does he actually have, like, you know, Mio spread out his hands and flap them like wings? He is, and he does. His skin is a dark blue like the night sky that glitters with the constellations. I didn't have time to know him personally, but he promoted me and gave me this mission himself. He is a pious and strong man. With his leadership and my power, Skull will return to its former glory. The other two looked at Enra admiringly now. They hadn't realized how important his mission was. If they succeeded, then perhaps the rest of Sylvain could be saved as well. They heard a tiny knock on the window and looked up to see a striped bushy tail swish out of view. Then, leaving something on the windowsill, Enra opened the window and retrieved another potion bottle. The label read, "May this potion grant the protection of faith to those who would drink it." The three finally laid out their bedrolls on the cabin's wood floor and rested for the night. Alright, for the VOD watchers later, I'm calling it early because I'm gonna go pick up dinner. Thank you for watching, and I love you.